Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of them all? And the mirror replied, Though you, my queen, are fair, 'tis true, Snow White is fairer far than you. Welcome back, you guys. Welcome to ASMRtist. And today we're going to read a book about Snow White. Don't forget to subscribe and share this video with someone who you know would enjoy tingles like this. Like this video if you find it tingly. Let's get started. It was deep midwinter, and snowflakes were falling like feathers from the sky. A queen sat sewing at her window, which had a fine black ebony frame. As she gazed out at the white landscape, she pricked her finger with the needle, and 3 drops of blood fell on the snow. If only I had a child as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as ebony, she thought. Not long after, her wish was granted, for a daughter was born to her. The child's skin was white as snow, her lips and cheeks as red as blood, and her hair as black as ebony. So she was called Snow White. But as she was born, the queen died. Oh no. After a year, the king married again. His Snow White was as beautiful as can be, though so proud and overbearing that she could not endure another rival to her beauty. The new queen had a magic mirror, and when she stood before it gazing at her own reflection, she would ask, Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? It will always reply, You, my lady queen, are the fairest one of all. Then she was happy, for she knew the mirror always spoke the truth. But Snow White was growing prettier and prettier every day. When she was 7 years old, she was as beautiful as a bright day, and fairer than the queen herself. One day, when the queen asked her, Mirror, the question, it replied, Though you, my queen, are fair, 'tis true, Snow White is fairer than you. The queen flew into a dreadful rage and turned green and yellow with jealousy. From this hour forth she hated the girl, and envied and malice grew with like weeds in her heart, so that she had no more peace day or night. One day she called a huntsman to hunt her, and said, Take the child out into the forest. I never want to see her face again. You must kill her and bring her back. Bring her lungs and liver as proof she is dead. The huntsman did as he was told, and led Snow White into the forest. she felt so frightened she didn't know which way to turn. Now the poor child found herself alone in the forest, and she felt so frightened she didn't know which way to turn. She began to run over the sharp stones and through rambling bushes. The wild beasts ran close by her, but they did not harm her. Snow White ran as far as her legs would carry her, and as evening approached, she saw a little house and went inside to rest. Everything was very small in the little house, but cleaner and neater than anything you can imagine. In the middle of the room, there stood a little table with a white tablecloth and 7 little plates, each with its fork, spoon, knife, and cup. Side by side against the wall, there were 7 little beds covered with shiny white counterpanes. Snow White felt so hungry and thirsty that she ate a bite of bread and some porridge from each plate and drank a drop of wine out of each cup, for she did not want to leave anyone without food or drink. Then, finally feeling tired, she lay down on one of the beds, but it wasn't comfortable. She tried all the others in turn. One was too long, the other was too short, until she tried the 7th, which was just right. So she lay down upon it, said her prayers, and fell asleep. When it was quite dark, the masters of the little house returned. There were 7 dwarfs who worked high up in the mountains. They lit their 7 little lamps and saw that someone had been there, for the room was not as how they left it. The first said, "Who's been sitting on my chair?" The second said, "Who's been eating out of my plate?" The third said, "Who's been eating my bread?" The fourth said, "Who's been tasting my porridge?" The fifth said, "Who's been using my fork?" The sixth said, "Who's been cutting with my knife?" The seventh said, "Who's been drinking out of my cup?" Then the first dwarf looked around and saw a hollow in his bed. He asked again, "Who's been lying in my bed?" The others came running up, and each one exclaimed as he saw his bed, "Somebody has been lying on mine too." But when the 7th came to his bed, he saw Snow White lying there, fast asleep. He called the others, who ran up and shone their lamps on the bed. Goodness gracious," they cried when they saw Snow White lying there. "What a beautiful child!" They were so enchanted by her beauty that they did not wake her, but they let her sleep. The 7th dwarf slept with his companions 1 hour in each bed, and in this way he managed to pass the night. The next morning, when Snow White awoke, she saw the 7 dwarfs and felt very frightened, but they were friendly and asked her what she was called. "I am Snow White," she replied. "How is it you come to our house?" asked the dwarfs. She told them how her stepmother had tried to put her to death, and how the huntsman had speared her, and how she ran the whole day until she found their house. Then the dwarf said to her, "If you will keep house for us, cook, make beds, do washing, sewing, and knitting, and keep everything neat and clean, you can stay with us. And you shall want for is fairer than you. O'er 7th stream and 7th hill, with 7 dwarfs she's living still. When the queen heard those words, her blood boiled with anger, for the mirror always spoke the truth. She knew now that the huntsman had deceived her, and that Snow White was still alive. Day and night she pondered how she might destroy her, for as long as she felt she was not the fairest in the land, jealousy left her no rest. At last she hit upon a plan. She stained her face and dressed up herself as an old peddler woman. In this disguise she set off over the 7 hills till she came to the house of the 7 dwarfs. She knocked at the door, calling, "Fine wares for sale, fine wares for sale." Oh wow. Snow White peeped out of the window and called her, good day, woman. What have you for sale?" "Good wares, fine wares," she answered. "Laces all of rainbow hues." And she held up one that was made of some bright silk. "Surely I can let the honest woman in," she thought. So she unbarred the doors and bought the pretty lace. "Goodness gracious, child," said the old woman. "What a mess you look. Come, I'll lace up your borders properly for once." Snow White, suspecting no evil, stood before her and let the old woman lace up her so quickly, so tightly, that it took her breath away. She fell down dead. "Now you're no longer the fairest," said the wicked woman as she hastened away. In the evening, the 7 dwarfs came home. You can imagine what a fright they got when they saw their dear Snow White lying on the floor, as still and motionless as a dead person. They lifted her up tenderly, and when they saw how tightly laced she was, they cut the lace in 2. She began to breathe, and little by little came back to life. When the dwarfs heard what had happened, they said, "Why, the old peddler woman was none other than the queen. In the future you must be sure to let no one in if we are not at home." As soon as the wicked queen got home, she went straight to her mirror. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" And the mirror answered as before, "Though you, my queen, are fair is true, Snow White is fairer than you. O'er 7th stream and 7th hill, with 7 dwarfs she's living still." When the queen heard this, she was angry that the blood drained from her face, because she saw once that Snow White must be alive again. "This time," she said to herself, "I will think of something that will make an end of you once and for all." By means of witchcraft, which she understood well, she made a poisoned comb. Then she dressed herself up to look like a different old woman and set out across the 7 hills to the house of the 7 dwarfs. Knocking at the door, she called out, "Fine wares for sale." Snow White looked out of the window and said, "Go on your way. I am not allowed to let anyone in." "But surely you're not forbidden to look?" asked the old woman as she pulled out the poison comb and held it up to her for her to see. It pleased the girl so much that she opened the door. When they had settled their bargain, the old woman said, "Now, just for once, I'll comb your hair properly for you." Poor Snow White suspected nothing and she fell down unconscious. "Now, my fine lady, you're really finished this time," said the wicked woman, and she made her way home as fast as she could. Fortunately, it was near the evening, and the 7 dwarfs returned home. When they saw Snow White lying as if dead on the ground, they at once suspected that her wicked stepmother had been at work again. So they searched till they found the poisoned comb. The moment they pulled it out of her ear, Snow White came to herself again and told them what had happened. Then once more they warned her to be on her guard and to open the door to no one. As soon as the cruel queen got home, she went straight to her mirror and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" And the mirror answered as before, "The queen, my queen, all fair it is true. Snow White is fairer far than you. O'er 7 stream and 7 hill with 7 dwarfs she's living still." When she heard these words, the jealous queen trembled and shook with rage. "Snow White shall die," she cried. "Yes, even if it costs my own life." Then she went to a little secret chamber which no one but herself knew about, and there she made a poisoned apple. It looked beautiful, white and red-cheeked, so that anyone who saw it longed to eat it, but anyone who did so would certainly die on the spot. When the apple was ready, she stained her face, dressed herself up as a peasant woman, and set off again to the house of the 7 dwarfs. She knocked at the door. Snow White put her head out of the window and called out, "I must not let anyone in. The 7 dwarfs told me not to." "Quite right," answered the old peasant woman. "But I'll soon have no more apples. Here, I'll give you one." "No," said Snow White, "I may not take it." "Are you afraid of being poisoned?" asked the old woman. "See, I will cut up this apple in half. I'll eat the white cheek and you can eat the red." But the apple was so cunningly made that only the red cheek was poisoned. Snow White longed to eat the tempting fruit, and when she saw that the peasant woman was eating it herself, she could resist no longer. Stretching out her hand, she took the poisoned half, but hardly had the first bite past her lips than she fell down dead on the ground. The eyes of the cruel queen sparkled with pleasure, and laughing aloud as she cried, "Ha, ha, ha! As white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as ebony, ha, ha, ha! This time the dwarfs won't be able to bring you back to life." When she got home, the queen asked the mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" At last it replied, "You, my lady queen, are the fairest one of all." Then her jealous heart was at rest, and at last as much at rest as a jealous heart can ever be. When the dwarfs came home in the evening, they found Snow White lying on the ground, and she neither breathed nor stirred. They lifted her up and looked everywhere to see if they could find anything poisonous. They unlaced her bodice, combed her hair, washed her with water and wine, but all in vain. The child was dead and remained dead. They placed her on a barrier, and all the 7 dwarfs sat around it, weeping and sobbing for 3 whole days. At last they made their way up. At last they made up their minds to bury her, but she looked whatever you like for it. But the dwarf said, not for all the gold in the world would we part with it. Well then, he replied, let me have it as a gift, because I can't live without seeing Snow White. I will cherish and love it as my dearest possession. He spoke so sadly that the good dwarfs had pity on him. They gave him the coffin, and the prince told his servants to bear it away on their shoulders. Now it happened that they stumbled over a tree stump and choked the coffin so violently that the poisoned bit of apple Snow White had swallowed fell out of her throat. Before long she opened her eyes, lifted the lid of the coffin, and sat up alive and well. Where am I? She cried. The prince answered joyfully, You're with me. And he told her all that had happened. He also told her he loved her better than anyone in the whole wide world, and asked her to go with him to his father's palace and be his wife. Snow White consented and went with him, and the marriage was celebrated with great pomp and ceremony.